He's a retired senior tech director, Corps with 33 years. He has a really big passion in gardening. He's here to do compost, but he does, I'm a naturalist. He does many different aspects for us in the class. 2016 became Texas Master Composter. 2017, the iNaturalist. 2017, Waterbury County Master Gardener class, Earth Kind Specialist, Advanced Training. Native Plant Society of Texas, San Antonio, the Audubon Society member, as well as Native Landscape Certification Program and City Nature Challenge, as well as the San Antonio River. So he comes with a lot of great information to pass out. So I'd like to introduce Peter. If you would come up, again, no strange to it.
Thank you, Bill. Okay. Last time I did this, as you saw the presentation, was 2018. I want to say you were the only one of the ones that were there last time. Yeah, in shirts. Okay. So I got a fan. No, but anyway, why do we compost? Anybody, and I'm just going to ask in general, why do you want to compost? I mean, anybody? For your garden, maybe? Do you have land and you want to do some composting on? You may have a backhoe. So, or you may be in an apartment. You could compost in that small of a living quarters. But there's lots of reasons for composting. When I went through the training, and actually what Bill said, 2016, it was through the State of Texas Alliance of Recycling. And now, if you've gotten some of the literature here, they've kind of been taken over by Take Care of Texas, back in the back, and that's this. And they've been taken over by the Texas Commission of Environmental Quality. So they still give some literature, and then yard care is here. It actually covers more than just composting, but composting is one of those aspects that we should be doing to be kind of earth kind, good stewards of the earth, is composting. So there's lots of reasons why we want to do that. When I went through training, there was people that had access to a lot of food waste, through whether Starbucks or through smoothie. They had a smoothie shop and they were grabbing the fruit pulp. So there's lots of reasons. Next to horse manure, or next to horse manure, but next to somebody that owns horses, and horses they do poop about 20 to 30 pounds of waste every day. They're well fed and everything. So that's my case. I do have neighbors that do have horses, so they do give me their horse manure. So I'm fortunate in that point. Experimental reasons, science. I know Texas State. They do a lot of that here, real close by, up the road, reduce landfill waste. So there's lots of reasons. But it does matter when you do decide to start composting. Who is composting right now? Okay. So hopefully we could refine and that. And let me just say real quick, who's doing it on in a city environment? Okay. And who's doing it wants to do it on a bigger scale? They have a backhoe and, they want to do it like the mushroom guys down, backhoe, nobody, okay. Well, good. Well, when I got trained on this, it was really for city dwellers. So, but I realized that there's people that come to this also that want to do it on a bigger scale. And you can do it on a bigger scale. And we did get trained. We were thinking about doing it on bigger scales, and we went to field trips on the bigger scale, on the commercial level. But to reduce landfill, that is a big thing that when I went through it, that's what was pushing the buttons. Reduce that landfill, because it takes about 10 years to bring a landfill into play. When I took this picture back in 2012, and I shot it from my truck, I had to drop some stuff at the landfill. We were doing some remodeling. turned around, there was a big picture that said, the big sign that said, no photographs. So they want this to be top secret, that this is happening. But this actually, you can actually see it from I-10, I think Foster, big mound, Mount Everest of trash. But why compost? Now, why compost? I actually took it from this booklet. I had other stuff, but in here you'll see save money. And I think with Texans, us Texans, we want to save money, especially with inflation going up. It'll lower your water bill, and I'll show you how. Less fertilizer. Yes, you could use less fertilizer. You buy lawn and leaf bags, less of that. Well, I gotta admit, I still buy those because when I go pick up leaves from my neighbors, I like to give them a bag back. They don't know how much stuff they're losing when they're giving it to me. They think, oh, he's taking away my trash. Well, that's okay. And I try to be by example. Eventually they'll get there. So it's saving money, saving time and effort. That time of stop bagging grass and leaves and so forth. Saving less time in watering. It does. Composting does create moisture for the soil, less time fertilizing. But I kind of argued that when I saw that. Less time fertilizing, but you're going to spend time composting and putting it in. So there's a trade-off there. Help our community, and that's another one. Save the landfill space, conserve water resources, and reduce water pollution. Wow, water pollution. Yeah, and that's true. Bill said I do a lot of work with, or mentioned, I'm with the San Antonio River Authority. It should have been said. I'm actually a volunteer down there with a master naturalist, and one of the big things is water pollution. And I see that's no different here in Guadalupe, in the Guadalupe River. It does retain water, so where it falls, hopefully it could hold it. And that's one of the new concepts. Try to reduce stormwater. And that stormwater is where the pollution is starting. And that was the main issue, the main thing. Now, let me just do an update. So I did that in 2018. So this is where I found an article, actually, this month, that goes back to saving money. And the prices of fertilizer have just skyrocketed. I don't know if anybody noticed that. Yes? Yeah. And so back in 2018, we were probably fat and happy. What's happened in 2020? COVID. Yes. What's happened in 2022? We had Ukraine and Russia. Russia is a big, does a lot of, produces a lot of fertilizer across the world. They stopped nitrogen. So that caused a big increase. So those are the two factors that cause a big spike. So composting is becoming to favor. There again, the dollars are following it. So hopefully one of the things that I realized also as I travel, my kids went to school in Missouri. Two of my kids went to school in St. Louis. And I noticed something different when I came back to one of the parks here in the area. This was built by this trash receptacle, and I say trash receptacle because it says it was actually built. Thank you. It was actually built by an Eagle Scout. Is it trash and recycle? Yeah, recycle's good, yes. Some of the plastic, I won't get into that, doesn't get all recycled now here. But the word trash got to me because when I was in Missouri, I noticed, and even in Arkansas, and I've seen it also in Virginia now, they put landfill. So out of sight, out of mind. If we see trash, we think, oh, it's out of sight, out of mind. We forget about it. But we should really be thinking about that picture I showed you earlier, the landfill. That's where it's actually going when we say trash. So I try to get the city of San Antonio to change that on that particular trash receptacle because they were replacing it and they didn't. They put trash again. So, but anyway, I was in Virginia. They had a big thing, I was in Williamsburg, there was the George Washington event was the day before, and there was a big event, not George Washington, the celebration where he actually defeated Cornwallis at Yorktown, and one of the universities, they had compostable only. So, you see at this event, they wanted people to put compostable things in there so they could go compost it somewhere. So that's slowly becoming part of it. But one of the big things I think also that we're finding today, and at least in the last, I'd say this century for sure, we want to reduce waste, because one of the big things it's doing, it's creating CO2, but it's also creating methane. And that's that CH4 gas. If I could learn how to drive this, right here, and that is more powerful than CO2. The others say CO2 is a greenhouse gas, but this one's like 22 times more powerful than CO2. So when we send it to the landfill, it's actually causing to create this methane. Okay, Mr. Hernandez will, why don't the government just capture that methane? Well, they do. I know, and I visited the landfill here, and I've talked to the engineers there, and the engineers say, well, yeah, we're capturing it, but we're capturing it towards the end, towards like when it's like 10% left, and not when it's, that 90% we're missing. So a lot of it is going into the atmosphere and becoming a greenhouse gas, which is not good for our environment and causing impacts to climate change. And I just heard on the radio today, 2023 was the hottest hottest year on record on the planet. So are we contributing to that? Okay, what is compost? Let me just go back. What is compost? What am I talking about? Here's some definitions that are in the dictionary. Decay of organic material used for plant fertilizer. That's one. That's Webster. And here's another one, organic matter that has been decomposed and recycled has fertilizer or soil amendments. And I like the word recycle, because we should be thinking as gardeners, if we all garden, table to garden, garden to table. And I think that's the cycle that we're talking about here. And we kind of missed that trend in the past 40 years or 50 years. I say after World War II. I think before World War II, we did have that cycle going in, but now we've kind of lost it. Hopefully we're bringing it back. And I like this one, biological reduction into organic waste into humus. And that's what, hopefully, and that's Rodale. Oops, let me go back. And Rodale is this book, if anybody wants to buy this, I call this the Bible of composting. And I bought it back in 1990, not this particular book because I got the updated edition, but when I did go to Master Composting class in 2016, it was still the same copyright book that they gave us in 2016 that I bought in 1990. So it's interesting to see that. They finally did update it just recently, and I gave my old book to my sister-in-law, which I didn't realize I should have kept. But anyway, this is my Bible. If I have any questions about it, I kind of tend to go to this first. I know with YouTube and everything, there's a lot of stuff out there mailing it out. Whatever works for you guys. But here's another big picture thing, how much is actually going to the landfill, and this was actually back in 2018, this probably changed a little, but they were saying that most of this is compostable, about 33%. Well, you can compost, somewhere depending on, how you break it down and so forth. Paper could be composted. So I really say now, about 30%, depending on the paper. And we'll talk about types of paper coming up quick. Okay? So this is just another compost benefits. And I think as gardeners, this is why I compost. But before I get into that, here's an example back in 2018, and it still works today. And matter of fact, I have other plants that I see differences. Here's a blue bonnet. Everybody knows the blue bonnet. And on the right side here is, this guy didn't get any compost, and this guy got composted, and you can see the growth difference in just in differences. This was native soil, that's fine, and this had a little bit of compost, and I was composting around a tree, and it just so happened that this guy took off. It just went crazy. Same water, I didn't water either of them. They were just living on their own, except for the compost. So something is actually happening, and I'll get into what's happening in a bit. But as gardeners, compost inoculates the soil with bacteria and fungus. It's kind of fell off the screen there, but it holds the soil particles, and that's very important. All of y'all were in a monthly meeting with Fanix, I think it was Mark Fanix. He kind of said compost is like fiber, right? And somebody tapped behind me and said, "Hey, did you hear that, Pete?" I said, "Yes, I heard that." I said, "Yeah, that's a good analogy." But driving home, I said, "Yeah, fiber." Well, I really think of it more than fiber. Yes, it does do, it does do fiber, it does do structure to the soil. So if you're in sand, it holds that sand together, sand particles together. Compost does. If you're in clay, it breaks those sand particles, or you're not, those particles, clay particles, to where it's not holding that water so tightly like it does in clay. So it has different properties depending on the soil type. But that organic is what you really need. Also encourages root growth and health and reduce runoff. So when you're producing more root systems down there, and this is what the sanitary regulatory loves to see, is more root systems means less runoff, because the water hits and it stays there. It goes down. It doesn't run off. It's off down the soil. So that's a big plus. Encourages, great for top dressing. I like to say, put it under your mulch. I like to put compost up on top, and also it does hold moisture. Okay, so what's our goal for composting? Whatever I don't want you to walk away to say, well, this guy's really nerdy in composting. And I said, yeah, that's what my wife says, but I want y'all to just develop some kind of intuition. Just like when I moved out of the house and was working in Corpus, and my mom gave me a cookbook, and I followed that cookbook down to it's like, now when I cook, it's all intuition. It's a pinch of that, a dash of that, chop up this. It's all intuition. And that's what, hopefully we could develop an intuition about composting. And we'll get into the very basics first. So here's the theory. There's 4 things that you need for composting, and that is water for sure, or moisture, and that's carbon and nitrogen as a feedstock, and also oxygen. Okay, and I'll let me rephrase that again. So we need carbon, we need some nitrogen, and when we're starting to mix this in together with oxygen and air and water, it starts to produce something like this called black gold or compost. And that's the goal, okay? So if you think about it's those 4 ingredients, and you're playing with those 4 ingredients, okay? And I'm talking aerobic decomposition, not anaerobic. And you'll hear a lot of anaerobic going on, especially in San Antonio. Anaerobic means without air. And there is some composting. I really don't call it composting, but they do composting because, to me, it's more fermenting. And I may talk about that later. Okay, so we're breaking down carbon and nitrogen. And this is basically what it is. We've got oxygen, H2O, and carbon carbon C is carbon, and N is nitrogen. And you'll hear me intermix this, browns for carbon, brown for carbon, and whether newspaper or cardboard or leaves, and then N is for anything like food scraps, kitchen waste. I don't like to say kitchen waste because I did have somebody, you have kitchen waste? No, I have food scraps. I try to have food scraps. And when I did the class, the instructor called it bugs. I now call it decomposers, because you'll find decomposers like black soldier flies sometimes in your compost, pill bugs besides earthworms and so forth. I like to make it earthworms, but that is the basic theory. Okay, now how do we let's drill down a little bit deeper. So what are the browns? Leaves, straw, and when I mean straw, don't get hay, because some people put in hay in their compost because they had extra hay from Halloween or something. Hay I tend not to use, but what's hay is grass. Grass is, in some places they spray that down, and I don't want that to come into my compost, so I stay away from hay. Straw, what is straw? Basically, it could be corn or sorghum or any of these tall other grasses that were just for fodder, were cut down and put in a bale. Yeah, straw's okay in that case. Sawdust, as long as it's not treated. Lumber, wood chips, twigs, try to keep it small as possible. Shredded newspaper, and I'll get into the types of newspaper. The newspaper nowadays uses soy ink. It doesn't use like we have in the laser printers or the jet ink printers. So I tend to stay away from it. What else? Cardboard, TP, that worked without the extra stuff in it. But the rolls is what I'm talking about. That worked. Something brown works. Any questions on that? Yeah.
The newsprint, and then what is newsprint okay to use versus copy? Okay,
yeah, good point. So, newspaper is good to use, and I brought this for an example, but you don't want, and if you get the newspaper still subscription, I still do, being in a small community, you get more gossip out of the newspaper still. Anything that's shiny, you don't want to put into your compost. This magazine, although it's nice and has all the information, it's in the wrong type of paper. It uses inks that you don't want to put into your compost. So you want the black and white part of it in there, nothing shiny. And I'll get into that a little bit more too. And as long as it's brown, I tend to, sometimes I'm lazy and I'll shred this up and put it into my compost if I can't take all this off. Okay, so that's browns, greens, anything, fruits, vegetables, food scraps. There's a list down to moldy bread. Now, moldy bread, I kind of, in a compost versus in the one bin, I don't put it in the one bin, I probably throw it in the compost, depending on the salt content. So, cornmeal, okay in a worm bin, but maybe not also okay in the compost. Yeah, because we do get sometimes expired stuff, so I'm looking at the salt content. Okay, cut flowers. Cut flowers is a very interesting thing. Is that be careful if you get a bouquet of flowers. What do they put on they do spray? Is it nicotine? Anybody know? Nope. Okay. They do a spray, so bugs, when they do hit it, they'll kill them. So there is a little pesticides in some of our,
Nicotinoids.
Nicotinoids. There you go. Thank you. So be careful on those. All right. And so we're still dealing with the four things, and browns and greens. So we need to talk about ratios. It's like in cooking. You could have a cold composting, or you could have a hot composting. Cold composting I'll tend to do and I do have vermicomposting, do cold. I want more of a carbon environment, and in the hot compost, I'll kick up a little bit more nitrogen, and I'll talk about what I mean in more detail about ratios. But we're playing those ratios between carbon, and this is my nitrogen because it has my fruit, vegetables, and I do throw in my paper towels. This actually came from my kitchen this morning. No, actually last night. I threw it in the freezer because I didn't want it to stink while we were here. Yeah. And this brown, I actually packed it. I think I've had it in here for about 4 years. Okay, no moisture, no nothing. It hasn't decomposed. But as soon as I start putting it with this and make a ratio, so this is what I want y'all to look at is ratio. So you'll see that I'll talk about 2-to-1 ratio, 2-to-1 ratio. I'm talking volume, and you're going to see me say 30-to-1. What are you doing, 30-to-1? I'll get to that before, because I know people will catch on to that. Okay, top questions that I get sometimes, and I know y'all are so chatty right now. Questions, onions, citrus. Yes, I'll throw it in my compost, but I won't throw it in my vermicompost. Wood ash is one of the big ones. We've gone round and round, and I've seen articles on wood ash. Wood ash, who's done a pH test on their soil? Anybody remember? What is it? What is it around? Huh?
7.8.
7.8. 7.2, which is about balance, which is more in the alkaline level. So you start throwing wood ash, you start throwing it into more alkaline, and you're really throwing it towards the 8s and the 9s, which you don't want to go that far on. So I tend to say in this area you don't want to do wood ash. Maybe if you're in East Texas where it's a little bit more acidic, where they have blueberries and they could grow all this, and it's probably a 4 or a 5 or a 6, maybe you'll see articles probably from that area say, oh, wood ash is good. Be careful, because it'll throw your pH. You gotta remember where they're talking from. They're talking from probably East Texas or the East Coast or something, where the acidic value is a little bit different from ours here. Ours is real alkaline. The hill country, the limestone, all that has come down and changed our ecosystem of a little bit more alkaline. Oak leaves is another one. Oak leaves, is that okay? I say, yes, I've done oak leaves. I just recommend shredding and shred, and I'll talk about that more. Types of manure, I say horse manure is fine, but tend to talk to whoever has the horse manure. Anybody uses horse manure? Yeah, I know you do. If you're using antibiotics, you may want to let it sit for 3 months, before you use it into the garden, or put it into your compost, but don't utilize it into your garden, definitely, because those antibiotics will still be lingering. I don't know if you use antibiotics on your horses or not. Yes, okay. So you want to make sure that kind of dies out before you put it in. Did I go the wrong way? Nobody questioned about biochar? Anybody heard about biochar? Biochar. So biochar, you'll hear that. That's another form of wood that's been burned without oxygen, and that's totally different than wood ash. Biochar, it's starting to get some traction in composting. I'm starting to put a little bit of biochar, but I'm not putting it directly into my garden because biochar needs to be inoculated. And what I mean by biochar, it's wood that's been burnt without oxygen, and it's kind of like hard to believe. But if you put it into a certain method of it raising the heat without oxygen, it'll reburn itself, reburn all the gases in it, all the whatever else is in there, and that's basically what they make filters with, carbon filters.
Is it same as you can go to the store and buy like charcoal?
Yeah, Yes, you could buy charcoal, but be careful when you buy charcoal from it. Make sure it's 100% biochar, because they do, if it does say quick starter, they're putting some fluid in there to quick start it. Yes, good point. I think, I didn't bring the brand, but there is a brand that says natural 100% biochar. Do not, Royal Oak, there you go. Royal Oak does have 100% biochar, or charcoal, natural charcoal, okay? Okay. What not to put in there, meats, fish, all that, no meaty stuff. Wood ash we talked about. Barbecue charcoal, that's the thing about it has fluid starters in there. Dairy products, with this other one that I was talking about, that's anaerobic, not aerobic. You can't put all this stuff in there, but you're actually fermenting the food rather than the compost or the materials or the food stock, whatever you want to call it. Oils you don't want to put in there, cat, dog waste. There are some people that do human waste. I'm not going to cover that here. I don't do it, but that's another topic. Weeds have gone to seed, invasives. One of the things that I've realized as most of us are looking at just doing it in our backyards, putting in invasives or seeds, you won't get it hot enough. Most times, the probability is you won't get it hot enough to actually break down or burn those seeds. So it's up to you, but in reality, I wouldn't do it in a normal backyard environment. Perfume or glossy paper, and that's what we were just talking about earlier. This wouldn't fly. Thermal paper, you go to H-E-B, they give you a receipt. That's actually thermal paper. It has BPA. And when I get my Amazon, I don't use my Amazon boxes because they have so much stickers on it, and it's not worth my time to try to tear them off. I really don't like tearing off this stuff unless it comes all together. But with Amazon, they have so many labels, where it's going, how it's going, what it is, and blah, blah. I just put it in the recycling. But I do have another method of getting cardboard. Yes?
So on those Amazon boxes, if you heat those labels, they come off easier.
Okay.
So is it the glue or is it?
It's the paper. It's the BPA in it.
Okay, so you're saying like the Walmart and H-E-B receipts, we should not be putting that in?
No. Oh, yeah.
Bad for you too.
Yeah, I don't really like to hold them either.
For
Yeah.
us to handle, it's bad for us.
Yeah, it does have BPA. Just want to let y'all know. I'm just trying to be as informative as I can. Fruit stickers, bananas. I'll tell you, I will wait till the end because the banana stickers tend to, the 4011s, I find them in the end of when I start screening my compost, that's when I'll start taking them out. Plastic, naturally, contaminated matters, any harsh chemicals and so forth. That's kind of obvious, right? Okay, let's get a little bit deeper. Here's the formula. We talked about carbon, nitrogen, air, CO2, water, and some decomposers. That all comes together. We have that hot coal, and we just get a little bit, there's that 30 to 1. So 30 to 1, and what do I mean by 30 to 1? Hold on. I always kind of think of, what's heavier, a pound of feathers or a pound of butter? Both. So really, when you break down your food stock, yes, this is probably lighter than this. If I were to pick this up, this is really heavy. But if you kind of do the ratios of, let's say, by weight rather than volume, earlier I was talking volume-wise when I say 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. I was talking volume-wise, right? And now we're talking a little bit more at a different level, weight. If we were to shred everything down, and it would be the same. With no air spaces in there, so that's what I'm talking about, 30 to 1. In vermicompost, I don't know if I have it up there. Oh yeah, there it is. 51. You want it to be 1, and I'll talk about that a little bit, what I mean by 50 to 1. It'll be a little bit cooler, that means more carbon, that's less heat. Less carbon, 30 to 1 kind of a deal, you'll have more heat, okay? What about air? What's adequate air? You know, you want to have at least, the atmosphere is about 21% oxygen. Minimum that microbes in water is less than about 5%, ideally 10%. So they can live a little bit tighter than we can up here. Okay, adequate water, we want water moisture to be about 50 to 70%, and what do I mean by 50 to 70%? You know, when you grab your compost, it's not wet. When you squeeze it, it's barely coming out. It's like a wet, a strung out sponge. You know, it's not dripping anymore. Okay, that's about I'd say about 70%. Okay.
I've done this whenever I have my composting bins. If it rains, I don't go cover it, and then it's soaking wet.
Yeah, it's soaking wet, and you could cause some anaerobic conditions. So let's talk about those, going back to ratios, carbon to nitrogen. Carbon, let's say we have too much carbon. You think it's going to stink? If I had like 4 of these, and 1 of these, and probably like 4 of these. If I would open this up, this is the only thing I was throwing in my compost bin. Would it smell? Yes. So the way you treat smell, and in Kansas there's a big stink about, no pun intended, about people doing composting at home or community composting. But the way you compensate for that stink is you add more carbon, and that. Just like I was talking about, the biochar is for filters. Well, there's carbon in there. It's trying to filter out that stink, and it's trying to work with it. So you want more carbon than if you smell that. If it's too low in nitrogen, you'll start getting that smell. Okay, which one would you rather have? So I tend to have more carbon waiting for nitrogen. So you'll hear, oh, there's that guy. This came out of Facebook, sorry. Somebody took a picture of me and said they like my shirt. My compost doesn't stink. I was going to cut my head off and just show the shirt. But my compost doesn't stink when I put a lot more carbon in it. So here's some of my isms. Carbon is important. We always talk about NPK, but we never talk about carbon itself, the organics in the soil. So that's one thing to remember. A rule of thumb, always have carbon waiting for nitrogen. So I have, before I go outside, I make sure, or I'm always having a good source of carbon, whether bags of leaves, shredded cardboard, or something going on. Right now, we're in the fall. This is why we're doing composting class in the fall, because this is the best time to start composting for the spring, or have it ready for the spring. Okay. The other secret is, if it's possible, try to shred your materials, especially your carbon. It'll break down faster. I tend not to because it's so gooey and everything. I just leave it alone. I'll sometimes get a little big knife and just kind of chop it up, but I don't necessarily do it with leaves. Run over it with a lawnmower with a bagger, shred it up. Other things that I've seen, which was pretty interesting, somebody put a trash can, all their leaves, and then the weed eater, so they were shredding it up. So that's what they used. I had bought a shredder myself, and it was actually a weed eater upside down, and you just sent it through the filter. So that guy, I spent about $100 for that, and you just put it together with his weed eater. Anyway, so let's talk about ratios again. Let's go back. And that's what this book really got me interested in. This is where it gets a little geeky, but I'll give you all a quick solution for all this. So these are all, somebody sat down and said, Okay, fresh leaves, these fresh leaves is about a ratio of 37 to 1, 37 to 1. And you thought you weren't gonna come here, you weren't gonna remember your math, huh? So that's 37 to 1. Is it gonna heat up? No. So you wanna find something over here that's nitrogen, that's probably, that will balance it off and make it go back to what I was saying. If you want hot compost, you want it probably 30 to 1. So you're having to mix these two items, and you notice that all these are pretty much nitrogen side, and all these are heavy in carbon, and they're real high in numbers. You know, so you could see cardboard is 563. That's why one of the reasons why I use cardboard is because it's high in carbon, so it will absorb a lot of the smell. You know, just like napkins, and that's why I'll throw in my paper towels. I don't wait till I get to the compost to put in paper, because if I forget to do it, probably 3 days later, my wife will say, "I smell something," and I smell that compost needs to go out. So that's my job. So we're having to do mixing between here, all these carbon side, and all the nitrogen side is basically what we're doing. And we're trying to come up with a ratio, 30 to 1, here's the temperature. If we go to 30 to 1, it'll go up to about 160 degrees, a little less than 160 degrees, about 155 or so, depending on your ratio. So when you start mixing these two together, you start getting these heat differentials in days. It'll heat up real quick, and it'll come down and cool off. And when it starts cooling off, that's when you want to start mixing it, turning it, and so forth. Okay? Any questions? I know. Any questions? Okay, so who's going to do the math? What time is it? Okay, we don't have much time. Here's a calculator that is actually on the web. So all this stuff that I was saying, you actually put in. Okay, I got fruit scraps. You put it in. You got dry leaves. I got about 3 gallons worth. Oops. Let me go back over here. I got one gallon of coffee grounds, mix it up, and that's about 29 to 1 ratio, and that's going to heat up. On this side, I put about 60 gallons of leaves to 1 gallon of coffee grounds. It probably won't heat up, so you kind of see that ratio happening. So here's a good calculator online that you could use, and there's the QR code. So I won't go through all of them, but you can see what's happening here. You could do it in ounces, you could do it in gallons. It gives you that unit level. So you don't have to read a book like this to figure it out. Okay? So that's a big help. Okay, so what's actually happening? We talked about compost is like giving fiber to the soil. Well, here's where my thoughts is compost is like giving probiotics to the soil. And what's actually happening real quickly, there are some microbes that are actually interacting with that nitrogen and carbon, and they're starting to heat up, and they're starting to produce. They're starting to make more microbes, and as it goes, depending on your ratio, you start getting into what is called thermophilic microbes, which is right about here, and this is the hot composting. These guys are cooking like crazy. They see the carbon is like probably corn chips. It's like teenagers at a party, the more they eat the corn chips, the more active they are, and they still need the protein, which is the nitrogen, and they start producing, and they start, that body heat starts going on. Not the kids, I'm talking about microbes. Not the teenagers, but the microbes. They start heating up, producing, and they start producing so fast that they heat up to about 160, between 135 and 160, around there. So, here's my next thing. I highly recommend if you're in composting and you want to do hot composting that you get one of these thermometers from, this one I got from Amazon, if it wants to come out, and you put it into your pile. And check to see what your temperature is. Do you want to do hot compost? I like to do hot compost because you're now killing pathogens, seeds, and so forth. So if you get it above 135, you start killing those pathogens and seeds that you don't want. You know, if you still get compost and you get a lot of volunteer tomatoes, that's probably because your compost is not composting high enough, or other stuff that you don't want. Okay? And I won't get into the other one. If you do get into, there are some hotter microbes called hyperthermophilics. And that's, there's a story I don't have time for, but that's when you definitely have to turn your compost. If you get above 170, you're probably looking for trouble. And you really need you're going to anaerobic, no air conditions, and you're causing problems, okay? So where do you put your compost pile? And I guess in this picture, where would you put it? Would you put it under, by the house?
By the back door.
By the back door? I know I won't put it back there. Would you put it by a kid's playscape? Would you put it under the trees?
One in the shade and one in the sun.
Okay, and that's, try to avoid direct sun, avoid flood areas, because you don't want it too soggy. You want to be, if you have critters, you now have to think of a different, what type of composting bin you get, and we'll talk about that. Is it accessible? I think that's a good spot. Under the trees, in the shade. You really do want it under the shade. And the reason being is, that's not me. You do want under the shade. If you do have it in the sun, especially with these heat waves that we're getting, it'll dry out. So you're drying out. And mostly, when I go see compost bins, people will say, well, come and look at my compost bin. It's normally because it's too dry and they're in the sun, and so you do want a shady area. I probably would trim up that area and so forth. I will tell you, my compost bin, I'm under a hickory tree. That hickory tree bears fruit way before the other hickory trees do in my yard. So it's real interesting to see that. Okay, types of compost bins, there's multiple compost bins, but I will tell you, it's based on budget, space, effort, feedstock, whatever you have. If I'm getting a lot of feedstock, I probably want a bigger space. I'm fortunate to have some space. If you have critters, you may want to consider a tumbler. These, I've seen folks do this. Actually, this was at Red Barn. It's no longer there. I stay away from wood because they fall apart. Eventually, and I'm not getting younger. So the 3-bin system is still good. If you use pallets, that's fine. Just remember, if you use pallets, this is not a pallet, but pallets, use an HT, heat-treated pallet, and you'll see those stamped on the pallets, heat-treated. Don't use anything that's colored blue or red or so forth. Sometimes they're sprayed for bugs when they go across international boundaries, and they get fumigated, so they get stamped, but the heat-treated ones are okay to use if you want to go with 3 pallet. This I had for a long time. 2002 I've had these, some of these, I've done those in trash cans. That's a little bit slower. Wire bands is fine, whatever your budget is, that's a vermicomposting. Okay, I have geobins, that's what I like. I think, Bill, you like geobins also. Some of the gardens here have geobins. This is a vermicomposting, I won't talk about that. So there's so different many ways of doing it. And down here, I think, Linda, you were talking about, you visited, or you've seen, commercial-wise, they do, this is called windrows. This is a commercial big thing, and I know San Antonio has one down I-10. and that machine is as big as, the blades that are turning it are as big as me, the teeth. We're not into that today. So, you do want to layer your compost browns and greens. Some people call it the lasagna method. But you want to make sure you're at least 3 by 3 by 3. I didn't see that anywhere. Did I lose that? But anyway. The size of your bin, this bin, at least 3 by 3 by 3. That's the minimum. I've seen bins where they're smaller than that, they're never going to heat up to 130 if you're doing a hot compost. I like to do hot composting. So layering makes a difference. Okay, here's a geobrand, and actually it was 54 degrees, I believe, outside. And I just want to show you it does work. You can see where the thermometer, using that thermometer, actually stuck it in there. The core was hitting just about, any guesses before it stops?
145.
145, yeah, 145, 145, down here, 50. Nope, it's gone past 145. So it's going to 50, 150. Anybody 150? Anybody want to stop at 150? 150. Okay, let's get up to it. We're going to make it to 155. 155, anybody? Okay, yes, it actually makes it to 155. Okay, so I just want to show you, 30 to 1 ratio will get heated up. Harvesting your compost, and that's in that brochure, is all that I'm doing here. I am covering it all in here, and I kind of broke it down in this cheat sheet. You could do screens. Here's a screen. My sons, when they moved to college, they left his office basket behind, so I used it as a screener. So be creative. I've had community gardens asked to build one of these, and I built them based on their wheelbarrow. So it's great. That's just screening it out. That's I think the next step that people fail to just come up with some kind of a screener method of putting it. All right. Into the garden. So you've now screened it. You've made this beautiful compost over here. I don't mind passing this around if anybody wants to see it. I do put air holes in mine, and the reason being is because it is still breathing. I've noticed when you buy compost or vermicompost, and you might, does it smell?
No.
Oh yeah, good. I really open it up. It might have a little bit of but putting it in, just work it in. You don't want to put 100% compost into your garden because because of that moisture. There's too much moisture. So I'd say nowhere 20-30% depending on the plants. If I buy potting soil, I put in compost or vermicompost just to extend, rather than, I bought a 2 quarts, now I have, I'll put another quart with compost and some amendments. So I've kind of expanded my potting soil. In the vegetable garden, I just mix it in and cover it with mulch and wherever I'm putting my gardens. Naturally, everywhere else. One thing I do want to cover real quick is compost tea. I wish I would have been able to make some compost tea, and maybe another time and effort we make some compost tea. Anybody heard of compost tea? Yeah. So compost tea is real good. Also, is what you're doing is going back to those microbes that are in the bag. You're kind of accelerating, putting air and putting other nutrients, and I'll get to that in a bit, and you're aerating it for 24 hours, and you're making those microbes that may have been, in your garden you may have 5 billion microbes per teaspoon, but when you start getting to this method, you probably get to 15 billion going. So that all that aeration, you could put it on your plants, you could put it in the soil definitely, and you'll see that microbes actually make a big difference. Okay, so there's different ways of compost teas. Let me just go to this one real quick. This is a big aha for me. We talked about pH, alkaline versus acidic. Most trees are probably in acidic. We talked about East Texas. What's in East Texas? Lots of pine trees and so forth. So yes, it's acidic environment. But you can make compost based on the more fungal dominant plants, where our gardens are more bacterial dominant. So you could actually make a formula. Let me see if I can go back. You can make a formula that actually specific to your environment. So you can make a bacterial dominant compost tea based on, you put in more sugars, fruit juices, but more sugar. They want more sugar than the bacteria does, the good bacteria I'm talking about. Where if you're doing more trees, you may want to consider alfalfa meal, soy bean meal, and so forth. Those are going to be more dominant to creating fungal environments, okay? And then troubleshooting. Do I have troubleshooting in this? I think it's in the back. So quick. If it smells, you need more carbon. If it's damp and warm and only in the middle, maybe look at your size. If it's not heating up, you probably need more nitrogen. So these are kind of some hints on troubleshooting. Okay, some cautions, and I may have touched on some of this, is putting in diseased leaves or so forth into your compost. You might want to be careful on that. Here's China berry. I think a lot of people love China berry, but it's actually invasive. And if you don't cook it just right, it will start growing in your environment. So be cautious. What else? Weeds. We talked about weeds. If you're not getting up to right temperatures, 135, it may not kill that grass. Okay. Here's some other ones. Poisonous oleanders, castor beans, hemlocks. All those are I'd stay away from. Castor beans. What is made out of castor beans? Anybody know?
Castor oil.
Huh? Besides castor oil? There's actually I forget what it is. It's actually very toxic.
I use it for my molds and bowls. That's
Okay.
the ingredient in the bag is castor oil.
Castor oil? No, but there's something else that they make out of castor beans. It'll hit me when I get home. It's a resin. Anyway, so be careful of some of the toxic leaves out there. It might cause imbalances in your pH and so forth. And then fibrous leaves we talked about, like oak leaves and so forth. Okay, I don't have time for vermicomposting, so any questions, comments on composting? Yes?
A couple of slides back, you talked about something with sugar, and I wasn't capturing. Is that good to do with sugar
Yes.
products?
Yes. I've heard even people put in soda into they have flat soda and they'll throw it into their compost, and the sugars actually stimulates the microbes. It's like it'll stimulate it and it'll activate it to get hot real quick.
So that's like nitrogen?
No, it's more like it's near. It's just like us. We just love sugar.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's right there.
Medina has a product called molasses.
Yes.
It's excellent for compost.
I would use Medina Stratman without sulfur in it, if that's what you want. It just causes the microbes to go crazy. I'd say more on the carbon if you want to just point. I'll look at the book, see the soda. I don't think I've ever seen soda in there. All right, any other questions?
I turn mine tumblers every 3 days, but
That's-
that's a big old thing that you've got out there.
Well, depending if you're and that's a good question. You're turning it. And one thing that I'm starting to realize, I'm not as, turning it takes a lot of effort, right? And we're not getting younger. One thing I've been starting to do is get my, a stick and just put holes in it and aerate that way. I've seen other people also starting to, and I haven't done this, but I'm curious now that Halloween is gone, these big blow-ups that kind of, that taking that fan that causes that and putting a PVC pipe and having a PVC, just flip a switch and aerate it that way. Hey, again, we're not getting younger. I'm looking into doing something like that. In some of the commercial levels, that's what they do. They don't have a tractor to go do it. They just have a PVC pipe and they have a big blower. And actually, they're using a blower from the bouncy things, and that's how they just blow put that air in there. Okay. So
At one time, I ran a PVC pipe at the bottom of the compost pile with the it turned up, an elbow at the end.
Yes, that works. Work smarter, not harder, right? So that's a good point. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm kind of confused. I thought you had to be adding water to this compost.
You do.
New composter, I didn't hear you mention anything about water.
Yes, I did. I thought I did. Did I admit? H2O. I'm sorry, water. Okay, that's okay.
Like how much? You just like moist or what?
You want it moist. You don't want to drain it. You don't want to water. When I'm laying it, I put my carbons on first, probably a little bit. If I have any twigs, I put it at the bottom. Put my carbon. I may sprinkle water on it, and then put my nitrogen, sprinkle. You just want 50 to 70%. If you were to pick up and squeeze it, it should be about barely squeezing out, just moist. Right? If you were to get a sponge. When you get a sponge, you wet it, you squeeze it out, and it's still damp. That's the dampness I'm talking about. Yeah.
Quick question. Eggshells, and specifically, that's obviously a source of calcium.
Yes.
I'm high on calcium.
Yes, I know.
Is it useful in terms of just structure within, since I have this soil anyway, just having that in there?
Compost, yeah. Well, I remember your question from before. You had a high level of calcium, and calcium is not...
I've kind of asked you that before.
Yes, yes, it is a high level of calcium. And I did look for it. You probably never have tomato root rot, right? Because you have high...
About my garden, we have a love-hate relationship.
Okay, but if you want to minimize that eggshells, I don't think it'll have a big impact, because it's just slow to break down, unless you're crushing it, and grinding it down. Okay, so
Moved from grinding it up, powdery, to just crushing it so it's small, so it has some...
right, and it'll take it forever to break down. It won't be right away. So I wouldn't really worry about that. I mean, just check your soil. I mean. Doesn't get to toxicity level. I don't think it was there last time. Yeah. Okay, question?
I normally grind up my eggshells with my coffee grounds.
You put them with your coffee grounds? Okay. Yeah, and if you look at eggshells in here in the book, it's like an udder. They do have an udder in there, and that's not, it's like either nitrogen or carbon. So that's fine. The coffee, you can see in the formula, one of the formulas, it's very high in nitrogen. Okay, any other questions, comments, remarks?
I was just going to tell you, it's ricin.
Ricin, there you go. Yes, that's what it was. Did you Google it?
Yeah, I couldn't remember either.
Yeah, it's ricin. Yeah, we got that big ricin scare, and that's, so you imagine certain things shouldn't go in your compost bin. But, okay, all right, anything else?
Thanks so much, Peter, for doing this. Just one last comment. I do the geo bins, and for those people that are asking, they now have hand augers that are very easy to use. It depends on how big of a bite you want to take to put it into the pot.
Have you used the hand auger?
But I use the augers all the time.
Okay.
I got away from the 3-bin system simply because it was just a lot
Yeah.
of labor doing that. But I tell everybody, you're gonna compost, go geo-bin, buy an auger, and you'll have compost in 2.5.
And talking about geobins, been trying to, and I think, Bill, you know this, and I think when I did it back in 2018, I had purchased a whole bunch of them, and I was selling them wholesale, because right now they're like $47 in Amazon, and I don't know, shipping's included in that or not, depending on the level you're at in Amazon Prime, but it's 47, I was getting them like 20, 25, or 28, a little less than 30. Yeah, so I'll see if I can get that, and if I do, I'll let Bill know, and he'll let you know.
Last thing, we always do a raffle at the end, and Peter, I'm gonna let you draw.
I'm in there too, so. It can't be.